Hello, everybody, and welcome to the August 8th, 2023 iteration of the Kubernetes SIG-Windows community meeting. As always, these meetings are recorded and uploaded to YouTube, so be sure to adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct. Let's get started. I think I've been out for over a week, so I'm not really sure what the status of everything is. James, it looks like you're adding some announcements. Yeah, the 128 releases next week, and there's that. Does anybody else have any announcements? Oh, all right. Next is we can give some space if there's any new contributors, but it looks like everybody on the call is what we've seen before, but I can still pause if there's anybody who wants to introduce themselves or say anything. If not, I think we can go on to the agenda, which is also being filled out. James, you want to just go first? Looks like you and Jay are both typing.
Sorry, I don't have anything. That was a mistake.
Oh, okay. This might be a very short meeting.
So Prometheus here, we have we're doing some E2E stuff. This isn't a major announcement or anything, but the operational readiness stuff where we're at is Prometheus has sort of discovered a couple of kinks in the host network, host paths sort of stuff for some of the E2Es that she's fixing. And we got some feedback from SIG tests last week. So we're going to have to do some broader refactoring inside of the E2E testing repo before we'll be able to run more of the SIG network tests on Windows. So I was kind of excited about the fact that we uncovered all that stuff. And so, but yeah.
The host network is not supported for Windows yet.
Yeah. So the thought is that with host process, we can probably do the same thing that she's
host
trying to do. Yeah.
Process should.
Maybe. Okay. So if we can't, then, well, then we're just going to have to make some tests explicitly not run in Windows that do things with host networked pods, right? So, yeah. So that's the discovery that we stumbled into.
And is that what caused the needing to do some refactoring inside of the operational readiness repository, or is that a different issue?
Well, the other issue is that one of the things she noticed was that the old SIG network tests that we're trying to get running for the op readiness stuff, actually, they used replication controllers instead of deployments. And so she's like, we should fix that. And then when she started fixing it, it's an interesting story. Like she fixed it and then, well, typical thing, right? Someone else was like, actually, this library that makes deployments, we should have deprecated that a long time ago. So there's some old code inside of YouTube. So I was like, Pramita, just don't leave us.
Yeah, they suggested to use actual framework code that uses the deployment. So we kind of like we're going to use that code, not the one that I was using. So we raised that bug also that, yeah, this is the old code and we should not be using that.
Yeah, so there's basically two ways to make stub deployments in the E2E test. There's like an old way and a new way. Nobody knew the old way didn't work. And it looks like the autoscaler people are still using the old way. And so, yeah. So it's kind of cool in that it looks like we're making broad improvements to the overall E2E test library. So I don't know. I felt like something we could be proud of as a SIG, right? Mm-hmm. So thanks, Pramita.
Yeah, good job.
Pramita, by the way, if there's anything else you wanted to add to that, go ahead. I know it's late for you though, so.
No, I think you covered it all, yeah.
It's good to see more momentum in this area again too. It's kind of stalled for a while, but it's good that we're picking it back up.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot.
One thing, Mark, like today I have like the one of the bug that we raised was marked as a SIG-Windows bug. So I have commented whatever I have been doing on that. So just have a look on that. I think that's there in the track the track sheet that you create, tracking the issues.
Okay, do you want to look
Mhm.
at it now, or is it worth pulling that up in the meeting?
Yeah, I think I'll just fix it. Then I mean I have commented whatever I have done till now. But yeah, further if I'll see anything, I'll just have a word with you. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Can you drop do you want to link to the either Jay or me? Can you link to that bug in the agenda too, so we can go and reference it again?
Sure, I can get to that.
Yeah, post the link for us and we'll look at it. Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you ever need eyes on something, just drop them in Slack too.
Yeah. If mentioned me, and probably other people too, I think it's just a lot easier to get attention if you're mentioned.
Yeah, you can yell at people, Pramita. It's totally fine.
Yeah, that's yeah. Best way to get my attention, and I don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Is there anything else going on?
I'm good.
So there is update from my side too. I am also working with Jay on end-to-end test on storage test. So so basically in ops readiness repo, there are only 4 storage test at the moment, and some of them can be enabled for Windows by just adding a Windows selector tag. Yeah, that change is easy, but one of the test actually is executing commands on node itself, which is like line that code is executing Linux commands on node. So for that, I think changes are bigger. I was just wondering, like, if we need to create a replica of that whole test just for Windows, or how should we proceed with them?
Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, well, I was gonna say, I think it's some of the storage tests, Jay. I think we should probably look and see how different they are. Is it a lot of setup that happens and then the tests like in either like a privileged container or something, and then the tests run or not? And then the tests run, or is the kind of the code that's executing on the node interspersed throughout the tests?
So like the first difference is really the container image, like they are using BusyBox, and I don't think BusyBox will run on Windows, right? And the second thing
We
which
do have a BusyBox Windows image that I think Claudio can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it supports all of the tools in BusyBox, but it's mostly they're not all the same tools, but there's like the binary that'll do the same thing in there.
Yeah, we do have a BusyBox image for Windows, and that's been working for a couple of years. It doesn't have all of the utilities of the Linux BusyBox, but it has the most common ones, and you should have most of them. Typically, the ones you could, consider that they're not included would be mostly complex networking operations, and yeah, I think that's pretty much the main things that are excluded from BusyBox. But yeah, most of the other utilities and commands are working on Windows BusyBox image.
okay.
And if the test framework if it's using the test framework, it should select BusyBox, and it would get the right image through the test framework, unless they've like hard coded in an image or something.
No, I think they are using test framework, but I saw still the image was not getting deployed on Windows node.
One thing, it depends if it's a hard-coded BusyBox image, like the docker.io BusyBox image. That's going to be, it's basically a manifest list, which only contains Linux images. Then, of course, it won't be able to spawn on Windows. If instead it's using the Kubernetes /test/util/images/manifest.go busybox, which is listed there. It is going to work because we have created a manifest list which includes Windows images and published it there. So that's what image is currently in use. Let me just send a link to that image and what's being used. Give me 1 second, please. Pum, 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 pum. Yes. Basically, yeah, so pasting in chat, basically that's the busybox image, which is most typically used in the Kubernetes E2E tests, for which we also have Windows images as well. You can actually find the image Docker file here, which is being built regularly whenever a new push is being sent to the test images busybox folder, which is here.
Okay. Yeah, let me check this then. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, and also, by the way, you can see in this Docker file, you can actually see all the commands that we actually have in the Windows busybox. Yeah, and we also have, you know, the regular Windows commands and a few others like dig and nc and curl and I don't know. That's you can see there. Yeah.
Yeah, so container image was first challenge. I will take a look. Maybe this will solve that problem. Another thing was the commands which were getting executed on host, and those commands are mostly related to mount. Like since the tests are related to storage, so they are mounting some volume or something, and then checking if it is getting, if it is available in pod or not. Some those kind of stuff. So currently, like those commands are for Linux. Maybe we need something for Windows.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mount commands are typically Linux specific, and yeah, that was the other category that I was forgetting. Yeah, that's a good point. If it's mount commands, there should be a Windows equivalent, which should be written and passed in. But yeah, networking and volumes typically are very Linux specific.
So it means like maybe we have to write a replica of that test case just for Windows. Should we?
Yeah, yeah, that sounds good. Typically, you should have, you know, the command argument for the pods, for the containers, which could be set conditionally based on whether or not it's being run on Windows or not. Typically, the test framework receives an argument to know which on which OS the tests are being run on. That's also what we are passing in our CIs.
Yeah, the Node OS distro.
Yeah,
that to
that
Windows
one.
if the tests are expected to run against a cluster with Windows in it.
And basically in the E2E framework, you actually have a function which will basically give you that Node OS distro. And of course, if it's Windows, you could run some commands. If it's not Windows, you could run the regular commands for Linux or whatever other OS is being run. But yeah, I think you are on the right path with that train of thought.
Yeah. So basically the point was like so earlier like we were thinking that just adding OS selector for test cases, that will be enough to run test case on for Windows, but yeah, this test case requires more than that. So yeah, I will look into it, make the required changes and submit a PR. Another thing I wanted to discuss was currently ops readiness only have 4 storage test cases. I think that's not enough. We need to increase the coverage there. Yeah, so what more test cases should we include? Like I am going through all the storage test in common folder in end-to-end test. I think some of those tests can be executed very simply. Yeah, should we go ahead? Jay, this is a question for you. Should we include those tests, or
I mean, I think that we can do whatever we want, right? Like, if we change the spec, we should just update the KEP and make sure other folks are okay with it, right? Like CC someone else outside of our little group,
okay?
CC James, Mark, Arvind, whoever, Claudio, and I think we should just update the KEP and, say, hey, we're adding this, you know, being able to mount a PVC and put one file into it isn't enough. We want to test other stuff and directory permissions and all these different sorts of things. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I mean, of course, yeah.
A lot of that has moved into the CSI repositories though.
The
So
CSI proxy, yeah. And there's
Oh.
another KEP for how to restructure that. So there's a common library for all of the mounting code too. So that might be another option too, is to use that library or image in order to do the mounting options. So we're kind of consistent. But
yeah, they have a whole suite of tests that you can run, I believe, as well. And then each individual CSI proxy is going to do things, or CSI like volume controller is going to be slightly different. So
yeah, so, and maybe we should reevaluate how the operatingness tests run the storage test, like include that as part of how the operatingness tests run.
Yeah, so I would say then maybe the first step would be Colwant to maybe start a thread in SIG-Windows about this and just and get some consensus, and then update the KEP based on the consensus, and and then we'll just work towards that, right?
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, actually, that was it from my side.
I do have a question. You mentioned at one point node selectors.
Yes.
For those tests, are those tests specific for Windows only, or
So they can run for both Linux and Windows. So I'm using the same thing, right? We give this variable which says that if the test is running for Windows or not, and if it's running for Windows, then I add a node selector to pod deployment configuration.
Yeah. So typically, most tests in Kubernetes do not have such selectors, simply because they're supposed to work on either platform. And I think this is the case for this as well. So basically, how we make sure that we're only running those pods on Windows, or testing only Windows and not running on Linux for whatever reason, is that we taint the master node, which basically means that no other pods will get scheduled there unless it has a specific tolerance for that taint. So basically, we have no need for selectors for this case.
So basically the thing is like this is need only for EKS. I mean, like EKS is designed in such a way that Windows pod need to have that selector because like we have some resource controller running which does some networking related stuff for Windows when it that resource controller needs that OS selector tag. So this is just a requirement for EKS Windows. Otherwise, for other cloud providers, they will just work fine. But for EKS Windows, they won't.
That's a bit strange, I think.
How do you
Do you have
the other E2E tests too then?
Yeah. Do you have any link for this?
Yes. Yeah, I will share a doc. I mean, it's in our public documentation. So currently, like we do at our end, like we have some internal, a webhook which automatically changes pods deployment dynamically, and that's how we have been running the test. But now we wanted to enable it by default. But yeah, let me first share the documentation.
That's interesting to know. Haven't heard about this before. Because for Azure or Google GKE, we do not need any such labeling to actually run the CIs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you run this operational readiness on vSphere, maybe that whole test case run, like you can see the reports and everything. But when we were like, shifted all together to EKS, none of the tests was working. So that is where we got to know that yes, that these labels are needed. So there are like two parts to it. So even so some of the test cases are running because we added the labels, but now as Kulwant mentioned, right? Even we add the tags, the labels, we need to change how the test case is behaving, particularly for the Windows. So there are like two legs to it. Yeah.
Do you have perchance a hybrid environment? Basically have both Linux and Windows worker nodes in the environment?
That's hybrid only, yes.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Yes, it's two, like it has both Linux and Windows both.
Okay, so that's why. I mean,
Yes.
it kind of makes sense in that scenario, though. Though, if I would be running tests in that environment, I would still taint the Linux nodes. But I think that's just me, that's that case. But yeah, an admission controller can also, enforce a node selector if needed. But I'd have to think more about this as well. But yeah.
Yeah. I might be good to start a thread in SIG-Windows and get some of the other ETS folks involved to see if they have any suggestions too.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, having a hybrid environment is an interesting scenario, especially since, if you actually spawn pods and the container images are not necessarily manifest lists which have Windows images, you might have some wrong scheduling on the wrong node OS, right? So that's tricky. Yeah. Anyways, good thinking material for the next time. I'm waiting for that doc you mentioned.
Yeah, just give me a moment. I'm trying to find the statement. Just give me. Maybe I can send you offline. In SIG-Windows.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
we can
that
just
also
continue
works. Yeah.
SIG-Windows. Yeah. I've got to drop
Yeah.
for another meeting. Jay, can we push your agenda item out and the continuity issue out till next week or discuss in Slack?
Yeah, I can start a thread about it. It's fine.
Okay.
See you folks later.
Yeah, thanks all.
Thank you.
Continue some of these discussions on Slack.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.